Hello, welcome back to week 3.1-ish of the Killing Millennials podcast. It's actually week 4 because we took a week break and then we're recording this on a Monday, so everything's just kind of out of whack. My name's Jeff Brennan,
My name is Juan Pablo.
and today we're going to be shifting gears from movies and TVs to hip-hop music.
Finally!
Dis-
God. Enough
Despite
with
the fact that I'm painfully white, I listen to a lot of hip-hop, mostly the newer age of hip-hop. And so we're going to be centering our discussion today around 90s hip-hop versus today's hip-hop, which is the golden age and why.
Well, I mean, everyone knows the best of all time is the bass god. There's no one else. Lil B.
Yeah, I think that should be a center point of anyone's argument about 90s hip-hop versus today's hip-hop. There was no Lil B in the 90s, and I mean, we could essentially end the podcast here.
That's it. We're a minute and 8 seconds in. We're done. That's good.
Definitive proof. I mean,
Proof.
the amount of support that rushed out for him after he got jumped backstage at his concert on Twitter was just ridiculous.
I didn't know that happened. I think my favorite story about something happening at a concert is, and I think I sent you the video one time. It's when the ASAP Mob was performing. I guess like in Philadelphia or something, and the fans kept throwing water at them because they were just a bunch of dicks. And so, like, I think Ferg and Rocky are just like, "Hey, you all better stop! Like, we're not gonna take this. Like, don't do it." And so they stop like 2 times. And then some guy throws a 3rd water bottle, and Rocky just says, "Fuck it," and he jumps into the crowd and starts just wailing on this guy, just beating the crap out of him. And the whole mob is just like, everyone's like cheering, and everybody else is getting in a fight, and I'm pretty sure like the cops got involved, and like they were banned from the venue, and it was just nuts.
That's hilarious. I vaguely remember that, but I mean, sounds like I should remember that a lot more than I do.
And
Other crazy concert stuff that I've seen recently, let me think. There's the one where that kid at the Travis Scott concert like fell off a 3rd-story balcony.
no,
And he got paralyzed.
whoa, that's terrible. Like I don't even want to laugh. That's so bad.
Yeah. I don't remember whether or not he got pushed or he jumped on his own volition, but Travis saw that and he was like, "What the fuck?" He stopped the concert. He's like, "Get that kid out of there!" And he ended up giving him one of his rings and like FaceTimed him from the hospital. But yeah, that kid's in a wheelchair now.
Dang, good on Travis for being a good guy though. Like I hope that guy's okay. Like wow.
Yeah, it probably could have been worse.
Speaking of Travis concerts, I just think people at Travis concerts just are driven to those sort of things. Because my friend was telling me one time he went to go see Chance the Rapper in St. Louis. And so this is not my story, this is his story. And so he drove like 4 hours from Kansas City to go to this concert in St. Louis. And it was the first time he's seeing Chance. So he got there really early. And he gets to the front row. And the opener was Travis. This was before he got huge. And so he was on tour with Chance. And so they were kind of...
Wow.
Yeah.
They could not be more different with their music.
Not be more different at all. I think Chance was... I think he was like in the latter half of his acid rap tour...
Okay, so a little bit closer than they are now, where it would just be like the devil and God performing in a joint concert.
Yeah, exactly. And so he gets there, and my friend hadn't really listened to much Travis Scott before the show, and so like everyone's really getting into it. Like people are pushing. Everyone's like about to mosh, and it's just supposed to be a great time. And there's this girl that's next to my friend, and my friend's like right there, right up against the railing. And apparently, she just got so messed up on just, I don't even know, God knows what. And she, like, threw up halfway through Travis's set.
Oh, no.
And, like, everyone was like, "Oh, what the hell is all this?" And, like, apparently the security guards, like, came in to, like, pull her out. And she, like, pulled herself together the last second and was like, "No, I'm staying here for Chance. This is not happening." And she did. She just, like... pulled herself together.
What a trooper.
She was a trooper. She like stayed through the show and like nothing happened. And I think my friend like didn't get any of the projectile vomit on him, so that was good.
That is good.
And he said it was like one of the best shows he ever saw. So it's a win-win for everybody. It was a happy night for all the fans.
Mm-hmm. I think what's interesting about Travis's live shows it's kind of emblematic of a shift in modern hip hop. So I think that people like Travis, especially, but also other rappers like I'm just gonna name drop a couple like XXX and maybe like Suicide Boys. They're like almost bringing rap together with punk music and punk sentimentalities, in the sense that it's very aggressive and it's leaning more towards the underground. So like the whole underground belly of hip hop right now is very influenced by punk music. And so you can see that in their concerts. People are doing mosh pits and other shit that you would normally see at a punk show. And it's also reflected in the fashion. There's been a lot of rappers recently that have started wearing like old thrash metal bands and stuff just on their t-shirts, and they've made merch in that similar style. And so I think we are really seeing an evolution in hip hop overall.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting you say that because what comes to my mind is as the underachievers. If you follow them on like social media or anything, their influence seemed to be this really big hodgepodge of all kinds of popular culture. They'll be posting about anime one moment, and they're talking about this like like punk band or they're doing like some sort of film that they watched. And so I think it's super cool. Them and Flatbush Zombies, kind of all that pro era, Beast Coast movement. And I think that's where you get that really interesting mix of all kinds of music, spearheaded by Joey Badass and Pro Era, and them still wanting to like reinvigorate that whole boom bap movement of the '90s, which I think is great. But what really differentiates them and why I'm a huge fan of all those groups, I think, and especially with Joey, is that there is a sense of them being so knowledgeable in the traditions, the rooted traditions of hip hop, that they take those influences and then develop their own style and take these risks that are really unique. And I think that you really see that with Joey's newest album, All American Badass, because I think that is, it has some beats that are very much 90s, heavily 90s influence, but his flow is never quite like those folks. And I think that differentiation is what makes him, one of the best rappers out there. And he's still only 22, so it's just crazy.
He's got a lot of room to grow as well.
Yeah, he's got a lot of room to grow, and I think that since 1999, he's been doing that. He has been just taking that core sort of idea of what 90s hip hop is, and then growing into something else. Which I
1999, the album, not when he was 3 years old.
Yeah, now he was 3 years
old. Which really does put it into perspective how young he is.
He's been rapping since he was 2.
Yeah, super impressive stuff. And so, yeah, I think you and I are both on the same side of the aisle in terms of what our argument is regarding 90s hip-hop and modern hip-hop. I think we've both said and thought that modern hip-hop is the golden age for, like, a number of reasons. But it's interesting that you bring up the fact that it's so influenced by 90s hip-hop, and the homage to 90s hip-hop combined with the cultural influences of all the time since then has developed into some really interesting music. Because I definitely agree with that. And what's interesting to me is that 90s hip-hop had to be there as like the building block to what we have today.
Right, yeah. And you definitely see that with everything. I mean, without people, without Pac, without Jay-Z or Nas, I mean, you really don't have tons of artists that we really enjoy today. I mean, my favorite hip-hop album of all time, and possibly favorite album of all time, is Illmatic. And
and that's almost undisputed.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a masterpiece
in the hip-hop community.
On every level. And, without those folks, you really just don't have a lot that we all enjoy.
Mm-hmm. And I guess my position is that there aren't many rappers today that can compare to the rappers of the 90s on an individual basis. Like, I don't think that there is we can see the test of time with Kendrick, but on the same level of Nas's Illmatic or just Pac's legacy, I don't think that we'll see that in this generation. However, as a whole, as a era of music creation, I think that we're living in the golden age because it's so easy to make the music. It's allowing so many people to tell their personal stories and their personal struggles, which is really the foundation of hip hop. And just on the accessibility basis and the fact that modern rappers have so much of a back catalog to look back on in hip hop culture to develop their own music and musical styles is what makes the modern age the golden age.
All the pioneers of hip hop that we think of, Biggie, Pac, all of them, they were exactly that, pioneers in the genre and revolutionized it. I think that because hip hop is much older now, modern rappers are able to take that catalog of everything that's happened before and just mix it up into something that's different and exciting. And I think that the accessibility of people to listen to music through SoundCloud, through just the internet as a whole, through mixtapes. I mean, Chance just won, as rap album of the year, right, on a mixtape. I think for the Grammys.
So,
right?
do you have any other thoughts on the topic?
Something like that. But anyway, it was a mixtape that he sold for free online, and he made history that night. And I love Chance. Chance is an amazing human being, and I think that that's incredible that we're starting not only just a young generation, but is the quote unquote establishment to accept that kind of that kind of production and that kind of music, and even other artists, even people like Pete Townsend of The Who had said that hip hop is the new rock and roll. Hip hop is the voice of generations. It is the it's the, I guess, guiding light and just shows the world how people are really experiencing life and really expressing themselves. And I think that's one of the main reasons that drew me to love hip hop and to listen to so much hip hop.
Yeah, me too. And I think especially now more than ever, hip hop is the music of our generation, of the current year in 2017. It seems like all of the cultural zeitgeist is centered around hip hop. Hip hop is at the top of the charts consistently, next to pop music, and I mean there's still great rock bands out there, but they're not as relevant. It's not as relevant of a genre as it used to be.
I really can't think of any traditional rock bands right now that have reached the levels of people like Drake or Kendrick or Kanye.
No, absolutely not.
I just don't. I can't really. I mean, I'm trying to think of. I mean, there's some pop rock bands that will sell out arenas.
Imagine Dragons.
Yeah, woo! Imagine Dragons. But I really can't think of any. I mean, I guess the Killers would be one because they're more traditional stadium rock.
But they are still very poppy.
They are still very poppy, and I only listened to their new album once, and I wasn't super impressed. I mean, I love the Killers.
It wasn't very memorable.
It was fine. It wasn't anything special at all.
It was fine.
it was meh. I give it a meh. But yeah, no, and I think looking at some artists in particular, I think that we're seeing these just crazy production and crazy lyricists, albums that stick out, the past few years. I mean, of course, Kendrick's, everything Kendrick has released, but Danny Brown, Vince Staples, Earl Sweatshirt. I mean, these guys are producing insane content. And I know that we talked about it a little earlier, but I think that they're absolutely incredible. And even so, they're not just traditional hip hop artists, but they're venturing off into different avenues as well, with music videos, with all kinds of things. I mean, Vince Staples' Twitter is by far the greatest thing on earth.
Yeah, he's a fantastic asset to hip hop culture.
To humanity.
He's great to humanity. Yeah, and you're right with the music videos. Just like with the fashion of hip hop and the lyrical content of hip hop, the production, music videos as well have taken a turn towards more like I guess low budget punk sentiments again. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Cole Bennett.
Not a whole lot, no.
Okay, so he's this guy who directs and edits music videos for underground rappers, pretty much. And I started following him when he was pretty small, and now he has over 1 million subscribers on YouTube. And it's his videos have a very distinctive, like almost over edited psychedelic type of style, where he just puts a bunch of effects on the videos. And part of the reason why he does that is because the videos are so low budget. It's just, from my knowledge, him and a video camera, and he has the money now. But when he started, he didn't really have a whole bunch, and so they would just film the rappers in like their apartments or just on the street, and then the effects is what would make the video shine. So it kind of ties in with the whole thing about hip hop being the most accessible genre, because all you need to do is buy a microphone, you can buy beats online, and you can make a hit song in your closet essentially.
I mean, yeah, it's all kinds of it's super easy. I mean, if you look at prolific producers now who are fairly young and working with some great artists, people like Knowledge, who's worked with Anderson .Paak and Kendrick. Knowledge, I believe in his career, which started early 2009 or 2010, he's produced over 40 different playlists or mixtapes of beats, just beats alone.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I love those albums.
Yeah, and he's just, I mean, everything he does, he's personally one of my favorite producers. And again, that's such an important aspect to hip-hop, too, is, a lot of people will only talk about the lyrics and talk about everything else, but behind the scenes and the people who are mixing that music and doing all of that, I think it's, we got some really great people working. I mean, I don't know, you've know more about, I would say, underground producers than I do.
Yeah.
If you want to speak to that or, can attest to that.
Yeah, I think the one that really made a lot of waves in terms of the underground sound is Ronnie J. He has a distinctive style that goes back to the whole punk thing, where he has very aggressive and almost overpowering bass in all of his songs. Like, if you've ever listened to bass-boosted songs on YouTube or whatever, it sounds almost just like that, where it rattles your ears, and it almost sounds like it's a bit too much, but at the same time, I'm sure it sounds really good at a show and stuff. And so that has had a really big influence in the sound of underground hip-hop, pushing it towards more of a aggressive, edgy side. Other producers that have been really influential, I think Metro Boomin, he's not underground anymore, but he played a large part in the development of trap music from like 2014, 2015 until now.
I mean, yeah, he worked with pretty much everybody. I mean, he's worked at...
Yeah, he's worked... Yeah. He is arguably the biggest producer in hip-hop right now.
I mean, yeah, I mean, doesn't he produce most of Future stuff? And, he's worked with Drake and all of them. I mean,
yeah.
I know Future has released, 3 albums in 2 years, something like that. I mean, I really should listen to more Future. I like what I've heard. I just, don't know the specifics. Because I kind of think that I'm in this phase where, I pick a few artists that I listen to a lot and I really enjoy, but I still find myself going back to some of the earlier stuff of modern hip-hop, and even then the 90s as well.
Yeah.
Like Jay-Z and, the Far Side, and all those kind of guys. Outkast, of course. But there's always room for expanding, right? There's always room for listening to other stuff, and I'm sure you always have great recommendations for different stuff.
Much appreciated. I try to keep my ears and nose close to what's happening in hip hop, what's new in hip hop. What were we talking about again?
Wait, what was that? We were just talking about pretty much modern age and production and everything.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was gonna make a point about Future. So one DS2 is one of my favorite albums of all time, and the point that you're making about how it's hard for you to get into some of these artists, I think is a problem that a lot of people have because a lot of these artists use a lot of uncleared samples in their songs. So that means that they, will take an excerpt from some other song and put it into their beats and then rap over them and then upload it to SoundCloud. And so that's usually found on SoundCloud, but you can't upload that onto Spotify. And you can upload it onto things like DatPiff and Hot New Hip Hop, but it can't go on Apple Music. And so for you and I, who are primarily Spotify listeners, it makes it a little bit hard to listen to these artists' discographies, which are mainly on YouTube and SoundCloud.
Yeah, and I think that that is just an issue of me not venturing into SoundCloud and venturing into all of that. But I still think that that I think some people that aren't really versed in hip hop or really listen to a lot of hip hop will immediately judge the sound of newer rappers.
Yeah,
and I think that that's also an issue. Is that you need to enter these spaces and listen, kind of with open ears, to because you will pick out influences and things in these in all this work that I think is really special. And obviously, like Kanye is not underground. I mean, Kanye is Kanye. But if you like break down Kanye and you like research and like listen to the samples that he uses, it's insane the amount of stuff. Like the sample he used in Famous was just insane and awesome. And I think that is songs like Famous, songs like No More Parties in L.A., Father Stretch My Hands, and I mean this is all just from his new album. And then all of those songs, you can see an artist who is continuously adapting and continuously trying to outdo what he's done before. And I think that that's why I love Kanye so much.
Yeah, he's done so much for hip hop.
Yeah, like throw away all the the weird stuff, the Taylor Swift interruptions or whatever, and truly listen to his music and the amount of people he's influenced. I mean, we don't have Chance without him. We don't have anybody without Kanye. And
I'd argue we don't even have Drake without Kanye.
Yeah, I mean,
because 808s and Heartbreak, that album was trashed upon its release for being, everyone was listening to it, it's like, what's up with all this auto-tune, what's up with this R&B music, this isn't hip-hop. And then I think, I'm pretty sure I have the timeline right, Kanye releases 808s and Heartbreak, and then Drake is influenced by that album, and he makes his first album, which was it Take Care?
No, Take Care is the second one.
That? Oh, okay.
It's not. Is it? I think it's Thank Me Later.
Okay, one of those. Anyway, Kanye kind of paved the way for this really vulnerable, emotional, R&B centric hip hop music, and Drake really just took over with that. And now there's a whole bursting Toronto scene of similar artists like Majid Jordan and
Party
others.
Next Door, right?
Party Next Door.
And what's the other one? It's not Denzel
like
Curry, but
there's Division.
Division, yeah. I mean, Toronto's interesting. I mean, OVO really exploded, and I was talking with somebody the other day, and so OVO is October's very own, and she was like, "Oh yeah, it means Ontario's very own," and I was like, "No, but I like that. I think that's actually pretty cool," and we'll just say it is that.
Yeah, because they're all from Canada. I actually don't know the origin of what October's very own means.
I
just know it's associated with
there's
Drake.
like playoffs, like in sports. I'm pretty
Oh,
sure.
okay. I know that Drake is very involved in basketball, and that's pretty much all I know about his connection with sports.
Yeah, he's the brand ambassador for the Toronto Raptors.
Yeah. Wait, so how does that work if they're a Canadian team? Like, how do they compete in the NBA? Is it because the NBA is a North American thing versus a United States thing?
So I think it's not. So basically, they have like the same rules apply in the same leagues, and so just having like the Canadian teams in it doesn't really. I mean, so Toronto came into the league in '95. That's when the Raptors
Okay,
first.
so pretty recently.
Pretty recently in terms of the history of basketball. But they had the Vancouver Grizzlies as well before they moved to Memphis. And then they've had the Blue Jays for a while, and they've had other teams. I think that the expansion into Canada really works really well. I think that the only issue that people have with it is is like getting the passports and like dealing with that kind of stuff.
I could see there's a lot of issues with that.
Yeah, speaking of like new issues that came from that. So have you ever heard of is a player named Enes Kanter?
No.
So Enes Kanter is from Turkey. And if you know anything about Turkey, Erdogan, their leader, is
a hellhole.
Yeah, he's a piece of shit. He's terrible. And he's like revoking journalists' rights and doing all kinds of stuff. But Kanter and Erdogan have like gotten into disputes because Kanter is really vocal about the regime, and he's really against it and is trying to help his people out. And so I think Erdogan was like, if you leave the United States and you go through customs with a Turkish passport, like we will take it away from you and we'll like extradite you back to Turkey and like punish you. So I'm pretty sure that's the story. It's kind of crazy. You should look it up. Enes Kanter is great. I mean, he played for the Thunder. I think I don't know who he plays for now, but he's like a pretty good center. And I think that story is just really crazy and shows the power that sports figures and that folks have around the world, just given their status in society, whether it be music or it be acting or sports. So I think it's really cool.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, I guess we got off topic and like talked about Canada.
Very off topic.
Very
just
off
the power of Drake.
I think so. I love Drake. Some people will be like, "Oh, you can't love hip hop if you like Drake," and I will stand by this and say that "Take Care" is just one of the best albums.
Yeah, no, I don't have any issues with that.
I think "Take Care" is. I mean, you have verses from Andre 3000. Kendrick's verse is amazing and "Buried Alive" interlude. It has
that song always like threw me for a loop because I think when I first listened to Take Care, like I didn't really pay attention to the interlude because I was like, oh, it's just an interlude. That's like one of the best songs on the album.
I would agree.
Crazy.
And then he even has Stevie Wonder play the harmonica on "Doing It Wrong." Mm-hmm. And so I mean, there's just all kinds of people involved in that album. I mean, Rihanna, Nicki Minaj. I mean, we all know Nicki Minaj's best verse is "Monster."
Yeah,
that's by far one of my favorite hip hop verses ever. And so I think Drake gets this rep. I mean, he's always like beefing with people, and he can be kind of annoying. I get it, but there's no denying that his music is incredibly catchy and excellent all around on many levels. Take Care. Nothing Was the Same. I loved Views, even though some people were kind of against it. And More Life has some good songs. I haven't really given it as much of a listen as I should have, but
because it's just a playlist, it's not an album.
Yeah, it's just a playlist. But Passion Fruit is that beat is amazing.
Yeah,
but Drake is like, it's a playlist. He always does that, right? But interesting stuff.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know. I feel like he's stagnated a little bit. I think that so Nothing Was the Same is probably my most listened album from him, and I think Views onwards, he's kind of at this point where he doesn't have that much to talk about anymore because he's reached peak success, and so I think that when he's talking about how he's at the top and how everyone's trying to come after him at the top, I just don't think it makes for very interesting music. But at the same time, he's been super influential in hip-hop. He's the most successful crossover artist between hip-hop and R&B. And, I mean, he's kind of like anti-hip-hop in the sense that he doesn't share the same typical story of successful hip hop artists. He was on Degrassi, and then, you know, a couple years later, he's the #1 hip hop artist in the world. So
I have never watched an episode of Degrassi. All I know
me neither.
is the wheelchair meme, and that's it.
Yep. It's just so funny to see him like that, and then to see what he's like now.
I know.
It's a funny timeline.
I know we talked about it, but speaking of rappers who were funny, like that's not what I mean. Chance on SNL was amazing, and I keep rewatching the skits, and they're super funny. Like the whole hockey thing, where the guy, like the announcer, goes, "Well, I want to talk about the Rangers' offense right now," and Chance just goes,
"You should do that.
You should do that. That's what's up."
Yeah.
Oh god.
Nah, he killed it.
He did, yeah, and I just really, really hope he can make some new music soon. Not that Coloring Book wasn't enough. I mean, that's only a year old, but I think that he's in this position to where he has this kind of path ahead of him to make another really great record. And if he's able to do so, I mean, he's already super famous, but it'll shoot him to superstardom. And it's just one more mixtape away. And so really excited to see where he takes that. With the direction that Coloring Book was compared to acid rap, those two bodies of work are very different. They have some similarities that, are bridged together through his flow, through everything. But I don't know. I'm just curious to see where he will take that and where his influences will come from. Him being a dad now, him, helping out Chicago through donations to public schools and trying to be just the best person he can be. It's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can't help myself from... It's pretty fucked up, but for some reason I've always liked depressed, introspective Chance more than positive church Chance. And so it's almost like I want him to not do well just so he can make better music. But I think that he can still write a really compelling album from this stage in his life if he just talks about the state of Chicago, in the sense that there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in the city, which I'm sure that you've seen.
I mean, yeah. I mean, any city, really.
Yeah.
A large area with that many people. I think there's a lot of people that don't have their voices heard, a lot of people that do a lot of great things in these communities, and I think him as an artist being able to kind of be a proponent for that and be that voice and be that, give that support, I think is very important for young people everywhere and for just people in general.
Yeah, and he is a good role model for kids. I do admit that.
I mean, yeah, better him than, somebody else.
Yeah. It's always funny how he's contrasted against Chief Keef in a bunch of different articles about, the two sides of Chicago. Yeah,
wait, is it Chief Keef that's 6'10", or is it...
I think he's pretty tall, but I don't think he's that tall.
No, who am I... Is it Chief Keef that I think is really tall?
I'm sure he's over 6 feet. Let me look it up. He's he's 6 feet flat. He's not that
6 feet
tall.
flat. Well, who's a really tall rapper that I'm thinking of?
Waka Flocka?
Waka Flocka, there you go.
I think he's 6... Yeah, he's my height. He's 6'3".
Oh, 6'3".
2 Chainz is actually 6'5".
2 Chainz. 2 Chainz is really tall. Okay.
Yeah.
There we go. I'm just all over the place tonight. It's Monday. It's
a Monday. Yeah, that's why we shouldn't record our podcast on Monday.
Because the whole week you're just Monday. It's like Garfield over here.
Yeah, it's been an interesting Monday for me.
Yeah, didn't you say you had some crazy deliveries today, or?
No, that was actually on Sunday.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, those were crazy. I did 7 in 4 hours, and the last one, this guy was, I don't know exactly what the situation was, but he kind of just seemed like a bachelor. He had this apartment on Riverside in Austin. So he had like a really nice apartment in like a not fantastic part of Austin, and it had this like seaside resort type of theme. So it was like a gated apartment complex and stuff, and he listed like one complex in the favor app, and so I went there. I was knocking on the door, nobody was answering, and then I hear someone call around the corner. He's like, "Favor," and so I go. I'm like, "Yeah," and he was like, "Sorry about that, man. I used to live in that apartment, but now I live in this one, just like right next door." I was like, "Oh, all right." And he ordered $100 worth of sushi and then $12 worth of wine on a Sunday night at like 10 o'clock.
Oh,
and
it is lit in his place on a Sunday night.
And he tipped me $34 for that. So.
Dude, that dude's that. Thank God for that guy. I mean,
he was so cool. And like the order took forever too because he ordered a shit ton of sushi, and it took them like 40 minutes to make it.
Wow.
And I'm super surprised that he was as generous as he was.
I don't even think I could. I'm trying to imagine what $100 worth of sushi is. Either they just like have.
It wasn't really that much. It was just from a nice restaurant.
Oh, just from a nice restaurant. Oh, so was it? Oh, so okay. So it could have been from like what's Nobu? That's like the famous like super expensive restaurant in LA and like New York, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't quite Nobu. I mean, it was a lot of sushi, but I don't really know how to describe the place. It's probably like middle ground, probably like $30 a person type place.
Oh, okay. So that's pretty cool. I didn't do anything that exciting on my Sunday. Just the typical watching football. I did see Thor Ragnarok though.
Oh yeah, you're talking about that.
Which I really enjoyed actually. So I really like the director Taika Waititi, and so I like love him from. He used to write for Flight of the Conchords, and he's directed Boy, Hunt for the Wilder People, and all kinds of stuff. So I think that his style of very dry, very quirky humor worked amazing with Thor, because the first two Thor movies were just
too
dark
serious.
and boring, and like the second one was ass. So it just it was nice to have this like 80s influenced, kind of cyberpunky, full of synths and lights and neon and all awesome stuff, and it was hilarious too. The director played a rock monster, and so it was like he was just like in the middle of this planet with a bunch of trash and a bunch of gladiators. And it's a rock monster with a New Zealand accent. It was the greatest thing ever.
That's hilarious.
It
seems like there's a very strong correlation between the amount of synths and 80s references in your movies and how successful they are.
Oh yeah, it's like Stranger Things. The more the references, the more the synths, the better it does.
Exactly.
But yeah, if you haven't seen it, I recommend it. If you're a big superhero fan, it was either I watched that or Justice League, and I don't hate myself, so I didn't go see Justice League.
God, dude. What can DC franchise do to redeem itself?
Make more films like Wonder Woman? It's all they need to do.
Yeah, I guess that's true. That's all they can do.
I mean, I really think they need to pray to whatever God they believe in and get a miracle to write and direct a good movie, because they're just making bad decisions left and right.
Yeah, it just...
And I don't think it's the cast. I really don't think it's the people who are playing the characters. I really think it's the writers and the people giving them directions and the people who are trying to get these visions down and trying to be, reflective and brooding and intense and dark. And it's just, it's just not really working. And I really hate Zack Snyder, so I'm just like...
Snyder. So hasn't DC always been kind of like the understudy or like the lesser of the two comic book entities between DC and Marvel?
No, I wouldn't say
I know that there's like a conflict between the two, but I've always thought that Marvel was the more popular, even though DC has Batman.
No, I wouldn't look at it that way. There are clear differences in the type of comics they are producing, and I think DC does tend to adhere more towards an older audience with more mature themes, and I think Marvel is more um, embracing of the traditional the stereotype of superheroes and like that kind of characterization, which all stem really from Superman.
Hmm.
Even though Superman is, DC, but Captain America is about being the good guy and fighting back and protecting your community and the sense of family and tradition. And I think that Marvel does steer away from that, especially with um, their new like universes that they have with multiple planets. But DC overall does a lot better with its villains, and
Okay.
DC has a lot of interesting smaller stories and um, just shorter story arcs that involve really cool, really great characters.
I see.
So I don't think that one is more popular or like the king. I think that it really just depends on who you are and what kind of stuff you enjoy. That
Huh.
you'll find
Okay.
great stuff everywhere. Yeah,
But Marvel was definitely first with the whole universe idea, right? And in
with
terms
the
of the
movies and the TV
movies.
shows, yes, yeah,
Yeah, and so I think part of the reason why DC is having trouble with their version of that is because that they are second, and so I feel like they're almost trying to imitate Marvel, and they're like, oh, look at this idea, we could do this with our franchises too, but it lacks probably the same upper level management that Marvel has to ensure that the movies that they put out aren't garbage. Besides Wonder Woman.
I mean Wonder Woman, yeah, and everyone always goes back to Christopher Nolan and his 3 Batman movies, and as great as those films are, and I really enjoy them. Um, really, they're not all that. They don't really go much with the source material in that Christopher Nolan took a lot of liberties
Oh
to
yeah,
ground
definitely.
Batman in reality, and it worked out for film going audiences, and it made tons of money, and people love those films, but there's a lot of really cool stories that come from Batman comics that are really intense and really really great.
Yeah,
There is one where like the Joker um, tears his own face off and like
Jesus.
and like staples a different face to his face. It's really crazy, and they get really intense. But I think that there needs to be a healthy medium between taking influence from the comics and trying to please fans, and then allowing talented filmmakers to go and run with it and execute their own vision. And don't just hire the same director to make every movie. Um,
Yeah,
and that's why Patty
because
Jenkins and
there's a
Wonder Woman worked.
difference. Hmm. Yeah, because I think you can make a good story, or you can put together a good cast, and everything can seem right, but it can still come out as a bad movie if the director doesn't really know what he's doing or has a bad track record like Snyder does.
Exactly. And that is my superhero rant of the night, and
Yeah, I
nothing
learned
to
a
do with
lot.
hip hop.
Yeah, so started with hip hop. We talked about some very specific artists and kind of veered away from our initial topic. Then we started talking about basketball. Then we got to comic books. That's just the nature of the beast that is podcasting.
That is the nature of the beast of millennials. We can't keep our
Yeah,
minds on one thing.
zero attention span.
I have none. I wasn't paying attention to this entire conversation. Didn't know what you said.
What'd you say?
Nice.
Sorry, I was taking too many selfies. I was actually recording this entire thing on Instagram Live, and
Oh,
I
good
have no idea
choice.
what you just said.
I would have gone with Facebook Live, but Instagram Live works just as well.
Is Facebook Live even a thing that people use?
Yeah, I've seen people on it. The Philadelphia Eagles, Kevin Hart. I don't know, people.
Yeah, exactly. That's really the best way to describe Facebook is old people.
is humans are just using it.
Yeah, I mean, Facebook makes an insane amount of money just from how much information they've mined about us and sell to advertisers
Yeah, and Russians.
and Russians. But it's all old people now. Like it's hilarious to me to compare what my feed looks like now compared to what it looked like when I first made my Facebook in like 2013. Because like when I first made my Facebook in 2013, everybody on Facebook was active, and like I would almost only see posts from my friends about their lives. And now it's like 90% advertisements or like corporate posts from artists that I follow.
Yeah, or like
Like I hardly
now,
ever.
Yeah, it's like now this videos or like recipe videos.
Yeah,
and like all kinds of just whatever.
yeah. Now this really captured a market when I don't know if now this came like really got popular before Facebook implemented auto-playing videos, but the whole style of the captions at the bottom of the video make it so that you don't even have to turn the sound on, and so you just scroll past the now this video, it starts auto-playing, you can read what it's about, and
Yep.
you just get sucked in by it. It's a really interesting video style.
Yeah, and they have all kinds of. I mean, I've been guilty of watching a ton of them too. I mean,
Oh yeah, me too.
They're super
They're,
quick.
they're
and
designed to
informative and-
be engaging.
Yeah, they're designed really well too. The people who do the graphics are like they do a really good job.
Yeah. And there's a bunch of imitators now too.
Yeah, I know CNN does it and all
Oh
kinds
yeah,
of people.
because it works.
It works.
That's the only thing that millennials will sit and watch through. They don't want to read an article. They don't want to click on a video and not have it be able to be summarized by the text at the bottom.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I unfortunately got to bounce. I have work tomorrow.
Unfortunate.
Well, c'est la vie. You got to pay the bill somehow.
Yep.
And gotta hop to it. But great talk today. You certainly know a hell of a lot more about the underground aspects of modern hip hop. I'm still rooted in that traditional boom bap '90s stuff and early 2000s stuff. But there are gems everywhere. Go listen to Joey Badass, Danny Brown, Mick Jenkins, all kinds of people.
Trippie Redd, Young Bands, Lucky, the whole cast.
Yeah, hip hop is wonderful. It's the best. All right, that'll do it for tonight. Thank you so much for listening, Jeff. Always a pleasure. Have a great night.
You too, sir.
And thank
Farewell.
you. Farewell.